Leonardo da Vinci was born on April 15, 1452, in the small Tuscan town of Vinci, near Florence. He was the illegitimate son of Ser Piero da Vinci, a Florentine notary, and a woman named Caterina. The prevailing historical view, supported by scholars such as Martin Kemp, identifies her as Caterina di Meo Lippi, a local orphaned peasant. More recent archival and genetic research has raised the possibility that she may have been an enslaved woman of Circassian or North African origin, though this remains debated. Leonardo's illegitimate birth barred him from inheriting his father's profession or attending university, but he was acknowledged and supported by his father's household. He spent his childhood amid the hills, streams, and farmland of rural Tuscany, developing a lifelong habit of close observation. Water, stone, plants, clouds, and animals became his first teachers. Giorgio Vasari later described Leonardo as possessing, from boyhood, an extraordinary curiosity and restlessness, a mind perpetually attentive to the workings of nature. At around 14, Leonardo entered the workshop of Andrea del Verrocchio, one of Florence's most accomplished artists and engineers. Verrocchio's workshop functioned as a Renaissance think tank where painting, sculpture, metallurgy, mechanics, and geometry intersected. Leonardo worked alongside other future masters, including Sandro Botticelli and Pietro Perugino, absorbing a culture of technical experimentation and artistic ambition. Leonardo contributed to Verrocchio's The Baptism of Christ, painting one of the angels and part of the landscape. Vasari later claimed that the beauty of Leonardo's contribution caused Verrocchio to abandon painting altogether, a story now regarded as legend rather than fact, but one that reflects Leonardo's early reputation for surpassing expectations. Florence during the Renaissance was alive with humanist thought, mathematics, and rediscovered classical learning. Leonardo absorbed it all, not as a specialist, but as a polymath in formation, resistant to intellectual boundaries. Leonardo's longest and most productive period unfolded in Milan under Ludovico Sforza. There, he worked not only as a painter, but as a military engineer, architect, and designer of elaborate court festivals. His most ambitious Milanese project was the Gran Cavallo, a colossal bronze equestrian monument honoring Francesco Sforza. Leonardo spent over 12 years studying horse anatomy and engineering solutions for casting what would have been the largest bronze statue in the world. A full-scale clay model was completed, but the bronze intended for casting was diverted to make cannons during the French invasion. The clay model was later destroyed by occupying soldiers. The loss of the Sforza horse became a defining symbol of Leonardo's unrealized ambitions. Leonardo's artistic output was small in quantity, but monumental in impact. Unlike many of his contemporaries, he did not paint to satisfy demand or reputation. Each work became an extended investigation, a testing ground for ideas about form, light, emotion, and perception. His unfinished Adoration of the Magi revealed a revolutionary approach to composition, organizing complex figures into a unified psychological and spatial drama. Motion, tension, and anticipation replaced static religious symbolism. His Last Supper, painted in Milan, captured the instant Christ announces his betrayal, portraying each apostle as an individual reacting with shock, fear, doubt, or rage. It transformed religious painting into psychological narrative. Technically, however, the work was a failure. Leonardo rejected traditional fresco painting, instead experimenting with a tempera oil mixture applied to dry plaster. The result began to deteriorate within his own lifetime, making the painting one of the most restored and fragile works in history. Across his paintings, Leonardo pursued an unprecedented realism, not through sharp outlines, but through subtle transitions of light and shadow. He sought to paint not what the eye knows, but how it sees, allowing forms to emerge gradually from atmosphere rather than line. Leonardo's perfectionism often collided with practical reality. This was most dramatically illustrated in Florence, when he and Michelangelo were commissioned to paint opposing murals in the Palazzo Vecchio, Leonardo's Battle of Anghiari and Michelangelo's Battle of Cascina. Leonardo once again experimented, attempting to use oil paint on plaster. The technique failed, and the mural deteriorated almost immediately. Today, it survives only through copies and sketches. Michelangelo's mural was never completed. This rivalry between Leonardo's experimental intellect and Michelangelo's sculptural certainty became emblematic of two radically different artistic philosophies. No work is more closely associated with Leonardo da Vinci than the Mona Lisa. Painted between approximately 1503 and 1509, the portrait accompanied Leonardo for much of his adult life. Unlike most commissions, it was never delivered to its patron. Leonardo carried it with him from Florence to Milan and finally to France, refining it over years. The subject is widely believed to be Lisa Gherardini, the wife of Florentine merchant Francesco del Giocondo. Yet, the painting transcends its origin as a merchant's portrait. What Leonardo created was not merely a likeness, but a meditation on perception, psychology, and time. The smile is the painting's most studied feature. It appears to change depending on where the viewer looks, sometimes present, sometimes absent. Modern studies suggest Leonardo exploited the human visual system itself. Low-frequency shading around the mouth creates an illusion that shifts between peripheral and direct vision. This was not accidental. Leonardo studied facial musculature, emotion, and optics extensively. The smile is not a symbol to be decoded, but an effect, a demonstration of how perception itself is unstable. Leonardo's refusal to part with the painting has long puzzled historians. It may never have been truly finished in his mind. More likely, it represented something more than a commission, a private laboratory where art, anatomy, optics, and emotion converged. The Mona Lisa became a companion work, one Leonardo continued to refine as his understanding of nature evolved. By the time he arrived in France, it was among the works he considered closest to completion, and he kept it until his death. Ironically, the Mona Lisa's global fame is largely a modern phenomenon. In 1911, the painting was stolen from the Louvre by Vincenzo Peruggia, an Italian handyman who believed it should be returned to Italy. For 2 years, the painting vanished, making international headlines and transforming it into a cultural obsession. When it was recovered and returned to the Louvre in 1913, the Mona Lisa emerged not merely as a masterpiece, but as a celebrity. It survived further threats, including vandalism attempts and wartime evacuation during World War II, and today resides behind bulletproof glass in the Louvre Museum, viewed by millions each year. The Mona Lisa has been endlessly copied, parodied, analyzed, and commercialized, yet its power endures. It is not simply Leonardo's most famous work. It is the purest expression of his belief that reality is not fixed, it is perceived. Leonardo's notebooks reveal a mind in constant inquiry. He dissected dozens of human corpses, producing anatomical drawings unmatched for centuries. He was the first to accurately depict a human fetus in the womb and identified key cardiac structures, including the sinus of Valsalva and the moderator band of the heart. He understood the heart as a mechanical pump, studied vortices in blood flow, and explored respiration, musculature, and the nervous system with unprecedented rigor. His investigations extended to geology, optics, botany, and hydrodynamics. Fossils led him to conclude that the Earth was vastly older than biblical chronology allowed, a conclusion he reached through observation rather than doctrine. Leonardo imagined flying machines inspired by birds, self-propelled carts, bridges, canals, and armored vehicles resembling tanks. Leonardo recorded his thoughts in thousands of pages now known as codices, including the Codex Arundel and the Codex Leicester, the latter now owned by Bill Gates. Many of these notes were written in mirror script from right to left, a practice that has been interpreted as both a convenience for a left-handed writer and a reflection of his unconventional cognitive habits. These notebooks were never organized or published during Leonardo's lifetime. This failure to systematize and release his discoveries meant that much of his scientific insight vanished with him, rediscovered only centuries later. His genius, in many ways, arrived too early and remained unfinished. In his final years, Leonardo lived at the Château du Clos Lucé near Amboise, under the patronage of King Francis I, who named him premier painter, engineer, and architect to the king. Leonardo suffered what was likely a stroke, resulting in partial paralysis of his right hand. As he was left-handed, he continued to draw and write until the end, though large-scale painting became difficult. He died on May 2, 1519, at the age of 67. Later legend claimed that Francis I held him in his arms as he died, a powerful image, though almost certainly symbolic rather than historical. Leonardo da Vinci's legacy is one of brilliance intertwined with incompletion. He completed few paintings, yet changed the course of art. He built few machines, yet anticipated future technologies. He published no scientific treatise, yet saw nature as a unified system governed by observation, mathematics, and law. Leonardo embodied Renaissance humanism at its highest level, not as devotion to texts, but as devotion to the world itself. He believed that truth lay not in authority, but in experience. As he wrote in his notebooks, in words often paraphrased but faithful to his meaning, learning never exhausts the mind.
This is Biography Codex. Thank you for watching.